Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forgotten Generation podcast, first ever TFG Summit Month with your host, Troy. This month is all about celebrating and spotlighting amazing young people's journeys in their social action and youth voice, local and national levels, to drive change. Today's episode is the last one of this year's TFG Summit Month. It's an I Will Week Reflection 2025, the theme What Do You Stand For? With me today are two IWIL ambassadors, Alex and Kareena, who featured on TFG Summit Month episodes previously. Give them a listen before this episode. Would you like to introduce yourselves? 30 seconds introduction and also describe one word about IWIL Week. And we'll start with Alex.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a IWIL ambassador and the founder of the charity Reached Minds. And to describe one word about IWIL Week, I would say ecstatic.
Love that. Kareena, what about yourself?
Hello, I'm Kareena. I'm an IWIL ambassador and second year medical student. And one word to describe I think I'm going to have to play on one of the themes and say joyful.
Love that word too. Thank you guys for coming on this reflection episode. And so, what inspired you about this year's IWIL Week 2025? Kareena, we'll start with you.
Oh, so much. But I think to pin it down, I think that it was just the pure range of ideas and events that were being explored this week. I think having discussions of things from justice to place-based community work in areas like Ipswich was just very exciting. I think that as someone who has interests, and I think as most of our IWIL ambassadors do, you have your main interest is something you're interested in advocating for and working towards, but then you're also interested in what everyone else is working towards, and maybe you yourself have other ideas and social actions. So I think that it's the breadth that really inspired me this week. And for example, the justice event, it was just so exciting to delve back into something that I used to be interested in, which was digital human rights, and to hear other people's thoughts on that, and just to see how people could approach more controversial discussions in a very mature and inspiring way.
I love that. Thank you. Alex, what about you?
I think what was really inspiring about this year's I Will Week is just to see how completely driven it is by the young people, to be able to see a movement that is completely, not just talking about youth voice and youth integration, but actually demonstrating what that can look like in practice. I think with the Justice event, that was fantastic. And also the event that we had in Ipswich, where they aired for the first time our film about social action and the town of social action in Ipswich. We also aired it online for everyone else, which was so much fun. We did a fireside chat with our fellow ambassador Millicent, and it was just so inspiring to watch the young people be the leaders in that scenario, and also just to see how receptive everyone around it was, and just that to know that we always talk about how powerful young people are, but to see that everyone around us believed that too this I Will Week, when we got to showcase ourselves, that was fantastic.
Absolutely. I think it was just so amazing from a premiere that was happening online, but also the in-person event that you went to, but also just like the ambassadors creating content, blogs, and doing video content, and just really showcasing on what do we stand for in the themes of those days, that either it was truth and dignity, justice, community, and joy. I think was just so beautiful. What resonated you the most throughout the themes of what do you stand for? Kareena, we'll start with you.
Yes, that's a great question. For me, I think that it was possibly all the themes, but the theme of community. I think what's special about the I Will movement is that you've got people all over the UK just working towards their different goals. But this kind of is a nice way to bring people together, even if that's online or if that's, as Alex was mentioning, like the in-person events now. It was very inspiring to see what work was being done across the country, even by people who weren't I Will ambassadors, but who were involved and excited about the movement. So, for example, at the Just Cultivating Justice event, we had people from Swansea Feminist Collective. We had an inspiring speaker who works on encouraging healthy discussions in politics. And what was really exciting about that was it was also an intergenerational conversation, and getting sort of that link between the youth and the rest of the population. And also what resonated with me was that we were all joining up together for a common conversation and a common cause. And I think that sometimes when you're doing social action by yourself, it can be a little bit more lonely. So I think that was what was most exciting, is being able to come together, discuss and celebrate what work we're doing.
Absolutely, so inspiring. Alex, what about yourself?
I really agree with Kareena on this one about the commonality. I think that word she used there really resonated with me. What I think is so special about I Will Week is you have all of these young people fighting for all of these different things, whether it's mental health awareness, SEND inclusion, disability, climate. There's so many things. But what we all found was some common themes. With those five themes, we all had aspects of our social action that was sort of integrated through joy, through community, through dignity. There was some, in some ways, we're fighting for different things, but we're all fighting for the same thing. And I think that's what's so beautiful about youth social action is it is this catalyst. It is this thing that drives people forward. And it is at the end of the day, no matter what you're fighting for, it is unitive.
Oh, true. Love what you said there. I think it's so empowering. Why did the theme, what do you stand for, resonate with you most through I Will Week? Alex, we'll start with you.
I think I always talk about my social action journey and what I stand for coming from my own personal experiences. So, Reach Mind's my charity. We're a mental health charity for young people living with long-term health conditions. That was after I struggled with my mental health after living with long COVID and sort of extreme chronic pain for the last 5 years. Um, but what I'm learning through being a part of I Will is what you can stand for can be a lot simpler than that. And I think that goes back to the commonality that I just mentioned. Um, People can stand up because they're angry and they can protest. People can stand up for something that they've been through. They can stand for justice. They can stand for something that isn't right. But sometimes people just stand up for what they believe in because there is good in people. I like to believe there's good in everyone, and I think people just stand up because it's the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, we stand for people. And I think that's what I Will Week has really shown me because as much as I care about my own social action work and it's really, really personal to me and my own story, when I hear other ambassadors talking about their own work, I realize I care just as much about that. I care just as much about you, Troy, fighting for SEND inclusion as I do about my own work. I care for Millicent and her work fighting for care experience youth. I care for our ambassadors that are fighting for disability, for climate, for equity everywhere. You know, I think that's what's so amazing about what we stand for is we stand for each other.
So true, Alex. So inspiring. Thank you. And Kareena, what about you?
I have to absolutely agree with that. That was so beautifully put. I think that the theme of what do you stand for is so, as was kind of said, personal but shared. And it's so important as well that we have these moments where we recognize and enjoy and learn from each other's work, like having those little moments where you just have like a light bulb moment and you think, how does this fit in with my work, with what I'm standing for? Because everything is so intersectional. I originally started off doing work with digital media and like human rights on that. But since I moved to like shaping healthcare legacies and why that's important, and it all sort of comes together. And as Alex said, it helps us to make differences positively for people. And I think what's inspiring is that sometimes you can very easily come together and be working for something together, and it's really exciting and it's fantastic, but it's also exciting to see and hear what each person is individually enthusiastic about, and why, and their stories, and I think that it will come together and shape. I think I'm going to be taking away a lot of people's stories and it's going to be shaping my work in future as well. So I think that's a really powerful theme to be going forward with this I Will Week.
Absolutely. And touching on what you just said now about how you're taken away with that, and this question is what are the three key takeaways from I Will Week you will do in your local area and community? Let's start with Kareena.
Yes, that's a great question. So I think that the first thing that really stood out to me was the importance of discussion and talking about things. And I think it's the spark that helps us to go forward with action. So we were discussing with one of the speakers at the Justice event about discussing difficult topics that might lead people to sometimes become quite polarized or extremist. And it was really empowering to see people approaching that quite maturely and discussing difficult political topics. And it was so inspiring to see that the way that you can break things down together, work together, try and find common ground, because everyone does have common ground. If you look hard enough, it is so important in powering forward community and change. So I think that my first takeaway was the importance of discussion, but not just discussion, the importance of action as well. So it was really exciting to hear and see the work that people were doing through social media, through their videos, talking about what's inspired them, what actions they've taken away, and also further looking further to I Will work. This was before I Will week, so maybe I'm cheating a bit with this point reflection. But lots of I Will ambassadors have gone up to Newcastle for the EU UK Youth Summit. And what was inspiring about that was the place-based change. Now, I'm not from Newcastle, and lots of the ambassadors weren't, but it was amazing to go to a new place and be together in person, having those discussions and making that change. And I think it's even more inspiring. As Alex mentioned, there was the change making event in Ipswich, which is based on the local change. And I think that's something I'm very inspired by. And I'd like to, when in that event in Newcastle, we were discussing how can we have events like this in our local areas? What are the problems facing our local areas and how can we tackle this? So I think my last takeaway is I'm looking forward to trying to look at my local area, look at the issues, look at what joins us together, and try and create some events in the Midlands and take it forward there.
So inspiring, thank you. Alex, what about yourself?
I think my first point has to echo Karina's last point, and that would be that all of the great change that makes I Will so fantastic is rooted in place. One of the things we've been talking about a lot this week is how to make real change, it has to be rooted in place. Because, it's all well and good sending young people to Westminster to talk about a system that's designed to work against them. And when we're talking about social mobility, we're talking about young people feeling like the system isn't working. They can go to Westminster and they can say, this isn't working for me. But what does that change when they go back to Ipswich? It doesn't change anything, right? It is an empty voice. And when we're talking about active youth participation, we're talking about solutions. We're talking about real change. So if we're talking about funding and ideas and programs that are going into an area like Ipswich, they're identifying a program within social mobility and they're creating a program that will change that. That's fantastic, and that is youth voice. Like we had Ipswich Community Media debut their youth journalism program at our event in Ipswich during I Will Week. Young people saw a problem with the way information was being presented online. They feel like young people's voices weren't being represented in media, and they felt like there was a lot of misinformation. To fix that, they started a youth-led journalism program. That is an example of what a movement can do. It starts real change and something has happened there. That makes a difference. That is more than just a voice saying something is wrong. That is a voice saying something is wrong and here's what I've done about it. So that would be the first takeaway. And that kind of links to my second point about making waves, right? Is that people, that's what's so special about the movement is, the movement facilitates these conversations that make things happen. At the moment, what we're doing in Ipswich and in Suffolk is that young people are co-writing the public health report. So if you don't know, every area has someone who's responsible for public health in the council, and they talk about how to improve public health in the area. This the public health report in Suffolk is focused on how social action can be a solution for young people's public health, for their well-being, and how getting them involved in their communities and changing things is great for well-being, which is something I completely agree with. But that conversation only happened because the movement was rooted in place, as I said was my first point, and was creating waves and making people think. It facilitated conversations that's now unlocked about £400,000 worth of funding that's going directly into Ipswich to support this report that's not only been written about young people, but written by young people. The report is completely co-authored by young people at 3 different hackathons that have been run, one in Ipswich, one in Bury St Edmunds, and one in Lowestoft, which I'm going to tomorrow. That is a movement. that is creating waves, that is real change happening, that is more than a voice in Westminster. So I think my final takeaway would be that young people can make a difference and they can make a real difference. But that difference has to come from them making waves in a movement, and that comes through being rooted in place and where they're from.
Absolutely. So inspiring in what you said and such amazing takeaways, Alex and Kareena. So thank you for sharing that. And so what does the I Will movement mean to you in your journey in social action making a difference? Alex, we'll start with you.
I think the I will movement in my journey, when I hear the word journey, I think about going somewhere. So I want to focus on where I will has taken me. I was talking about this today. I mentioned to Troy before we started recording. I spent the day with MSC, the shipping company. So in Ipswich, the Power of Youth Charter that we have with I Will, where any sort of company organisation can make a commitment to youth voice integration in their company, runs nationally, but in Ipswich, we're fantastically managed to get 54 plus companies to sign it, and that's some of the power of this place-based change, right? So MSC have just signed it. They're a global company. It's fantastic. They're the first kind of private sector company to have signed it. So we're working more directly with them to make sure they've got that support, because obviously they don't come from a place where this is something that they do a lot. It's a very different sector. It's very different to what we do in the third sector. So we're giving them that extra support. But what I was talking about today is how when I started my journey, I very much made the mistake that I feel a lot of adults make when it comes to prescribing social activism. And that's when I started doing my social action work. I knew it had to be about young people and their mental health and their struggles with mental health related to chronic pain and chronic illness. And I thought, right, young people like me, I struggle with my mental health after chronic illness. We must need more mental health support for young people. But learning about this place-based approach that I will take, so I realized that it is so much more than that. You need to meet young people where they're at and see what they're going through. So actually, the structure of my charity now has changed. We have support hubs. We're setting one up in Ipswich. That's our pilot program, and we're going to be setting them up across the country. But that means young people can get together in their areas. So we have our Suffolk pilot program that is starting in the new year, and they can talk about the issues they're having with their healthcare. Because actually, when you think about it, rather than just waiting for young people to get mental health issues and then giving them mental health support, if young people were able to participate in their healthcare, inform their doctors on what their needs are, feel in control of their care, feel like they're sort of able to influence and change that and have that kind of autonomy, then it removes a lot of the reasons that young people with chronic illnesses and chronic disabilities and chronic pain are having these mental health issues in the first place, right? And it made me think about myself and my own journey, and I realized that I felt so out of control. That was why I was struggling with my mental health. I didn't realize what my role was supposed to be in society. I felt out of control of my healthcare. I felt stuck in between my mental health services and my physical health services. If we take a place-based approach and let young people address those issues and make sure that they are feeling heard in their own healthcare services, then we eliminate that issue. So going back to that question of what the I Will movement means to me in my journey in social action, it's made me realize that I need to listen to these young people to be able to help them. And the reason I was getting that wrong is I wasn't even listening to myself. And to do that, we need to meet these young people where they're at. And that is in their hometowns, in their home cities. And that's the power of these places of social action.
Absolutely. So inspiring, Alex. And Kareena, what about you?
Yeah, that's absolutely so inspiring and so true. I think um, the I Will movement is such a special, valuable, amazing organization. And I think that it's fueled by the amazing staff, the amazing ambassadors, the amazing young people who have come together with slightly different ideas, but on the common ground, as Alex had mentioned. And I think this week I've just been feeling joyful. I mean, I've been inspired on my Instagram feed, I've been inspired on LinkedIn, on Facebook by this podcast. I think it's just been wonderful to be wrapped with that joy. And I think that taking that forward, I want to be able to share and see how we can integrate this joy into work moving forward. And I think that one thing that I'm working on currently is the COVID-19 commemoration and having young people's voices heard in that. And as a medical student myself, like hearing about Alex's journey is so important. I think we need to get more young people who've had these experiences talking to professionals and future professionals in different areas who can help to support them, because that will not only help young people but help the system as a whole. People won't have to get to points where they're struggling as much. And I think that I'm excited to take these discussions forward, to tell people about what so many I Will ambassadors have been doing, and to feed that back to places and organisations who can make that real difference and that action more tangibly as well. So my overall, the feelings I have about I Will is that it's inspiring, and it's given me sort of a blueprint and a background to be able to go forward and help other people, which I think is the most important thing.
Absolutely. So, so inspiring. Thank you so much, Alex and Kareena, for coming on to this reflection episode and to really talk about the I Will movement. Let's talk about I Will Week 2025, as it's been a fantastic, spectacular one. I absolutely loved it, and I really hope everyone who contributed to it really like or took away and what I Will Week is and why everything and what do we stand for really resonated with so many of us ambassadors. And thank you to Magnificent, Molly, Finley, Bieber, and Mark for coming on these episodes as well. And to the Our Movement for supporting this TFG Summit Month. And of course, Bieber Change Media Network as well. Thank you everyone for listening to TFG Summit Month this month. And do not forget, if you haven't listened to the episodes already, go give them a listen. Episode 1 and all the way to this one is out now. Please support the podcast by subscribing and rating the podcast. I'd love to hear what you like and what could be better for future episodes. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram and iwill.troy, and also on X, iwill_Troy. Tune in to next week's episode.